Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on. No, we're going to wrap up today. I forgot what this video was. It's a special selection where one of you tell me exactly what I need to check out. This one comes at us from Who Am I? Wow, I honestly didn't expect you to even remotely like part 1 of Abigor's Time. So here is Abigor's Time part 2. This is interesting because I didn't expect me to like part 1. It's black metal, but there's a little bit of technical depth worked inside of it. There's some interesting deviations. There's some electronic bits in part 1. The drum work is amazing. The bass work's amazing. The guitar riffs are interesting throughout, and the vocal work, there's actually variety to it. It is blackened metal, but more progressive, interlocking a lot of ideas into it rather than just staying within its lane. And I enjoyed that. So here we are going to check out part 2. This is definitely turning into a bit of an extreme metal week, having checked out Infinite Annihilator yesterday. Let's dive into this though. Let's see where Abigor is taking us here to wrap up this album. We have some sort of prayer, some highly dissonant guitar dyads. So I think that is a bass guitar and some fast picking on a bass drum, fast picking on a guitar. The production on it's just interesting in that it kind of feels very digital. Yeah, you hear that drum work, man? A lot of compression on this track that I don't remember from part 1. It's only on specific instruments though. I'd say that the production on this track is still rather clear. The bell of the ride cymbal. I dig that. What is this low effort Black and Valley Girl Fry vocal stuff though? I was a little worried that I wouldn't have anything new to say about this that I didn't say about part 1. The first 3 minutes are weird though. Very different. Very, the guitar vibrato is nice. Darkened Majestic. A little bit of a nu metal vibe here while the bass takes lead. What is this riff? That excellent bass work coming back in. Nice groove. Cool atmosphere here. Dude, that section is a wild ride. Very avant-garde tech death stuff there. Almost also kind of feels like noisy, like mathcore. Another bass-like groove section. The bass played a couple notes, the guitar played a couple notes, and then the cymbal had a couple things just to wrap up this passing of the baton. The barely audible crackling in the throat. Heavy, dreary, unsettling. reverberation of white noise, as well as the higher pitch frequencies of these hits. Ooh, a jazzy walk-up. Nope, dissonant. No. Is that polyrhythm? Very vortex, swirly. What was that metric mod? Oh, jeez. The guitars are just rising and falling in pitch. Yeah, let's go. The separation of the vocals works really well here. Dude, these guys, man. We had a back and forth on the vocals. Yeah. That really fast half note hammer on full off technique though. Just basically a trill. Did he say dance to our song? Say that as the blast beats come in. Low tones. Counterpoint even. The bass has to get in on it too. Dude, that ride cymbal work. That's very present in the mix. It kind of spooked me a little. They turn it into a choir. Why? Oh, dang. That was good. The springy reap. Okay, okay, dude, I won't interrupt your ending next time. You don't have to throw something weird out at me. Yeah, so this is a lot of what I enjoyed about part one, but I feel almost have taken to a bit of an extreme. I mean, it's already extreme metal, but I enjoyed the oddities in it. The unexpected changes, the variety of sounds, and I don't know, ideas. I remember the first one had something that was equivalent to, the old edition, the old trope of the vocalist saying stop, and then the band stops for like a bar, and then they bring it back. Something like that happened in the first one too, and it happened here as well. I don't remember what they said, but the band just kind of quits playing for a moment. And I mean, little things like that, man, it feels so comical in a way. But I think it's absurdist comedy, which is usually what gets me in music. If it's not going to be overt, like the lyrics are funny, it's going to be things like this that like I just never expected. Metal is such a serious genre for serious people to be mad about things seriously. And then you have all of the weird left turns going on in here. And it's one of those things where, like, yeah, dude, they are serious musicians. They have chops. They know how to write music really well. There's a lot of really great ideas in here. And then they'll do something just weird. And it just kind of lightens the mood for a minute. I don't know if that's necessarily their intention. But some of these ideas are so wildly out of place that it just takes me out of the experience for a moment and reminds me that these people are just doing whatever they want. And it's not traditional serious metal. You know, it isn't all serious all the time. We have to look cool and we can't make any mistakes and it's just got to be badass all the time. And like they have no problem being just kind of wacky, kind of being obtuse and maybe even themselves just pulling out the strangest ideas. And it always catches me off guard to such an extent. It isn't like, oh, I didn't expect that, but that's cool. It's like, oh, I didn't expect that and never ever would have for anyone even writing adjacent music to this style. Why would they do that? It doesn't belong here. This is a dog meowing at me. It's just so wild. And I love it. I love this album for that. I've heard Abigor does. I might be confusing this with a different black metal band, but I hear that if I remember correctly, they do something different on most albums. They're very maybe not eclectic group, but they're quite varied in their output. And I believe that Time as the album, both of these parts that we've listened to, which comprise the entirety of the album, is different than some of the other things that they've released. I don't know if I necessarily want to dive into all of Abigor if that is the case, if I'm remembering that correctly, but I think Time will be one of those albums that it's just always going to work well for me, but I'm going to need time between, right? If I ever become familiar with it, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it as much. And mostly is because it's still extreme metal. It's still a bit too much for me, even now, 5 years into this metal journey. There's a lot of sounds in here that are just not for me, but I'm here for the ride of it. It's like a roller coaster. I don't know why I always bring up roller coasters when I talk about music, but it seems to work. And I'm going to talk about them in a way I've never talked about before. But I don't always like to be thrown around upside down at 50, 60, 70 miles an hour and you know, have that high adrenaline rush. But when I'm in the mood for it, it absolutely hits the spot and I enjoy my time on the coaster. And that's how I think I am with Time. This is not an album I could put on all of the time. But the thrills of it will keep me coming back when I remember it every few months or, you know, once or twice a year or something. I'm like, oh yeah, that Abigor album was wild. I'm in the mood for that. Let's throw it on. And it goes by relatively quickly. I remember, I mean, part one was also pretty lengthy too. Wasn't that 16 minutes? Oh, that one was longer. That was almost 20. A minute and a quarter longer than this one. You know, combined, it's almost 40 minutes of music. And I remember part one went by quickly. This went by quickly, 18 and a half minutes, and it's already over. Um, I just, I enjoy myself while listening to it, even if I don't enjoy every moment of the song. I do have a lot of praise for this, though. Particularly on the technical side of things, which, if I recall correctly, is where most of my praise lied for the first one as well. Particularly because, much like the first part, I don't really get the song yet. maybe going along with the lyrics helps. That I did pull the lyrics up, and I mean, I missed the opening 15 stanzas or so, but I did have it up for the final four or five. It didn't really help much there, but I don't remember what part one was about, and I missed half of this one too. So, I came at the end of this and then it was surprised it didn't make any sense. But the music is just a lot of great metal moments strung together with eclectic transitions and ideas, and it mostly comes across as either, well, all of it's pretty heavy, but it's eerie or unsettling, heavy, like a dreariness, a weightiness to it, not just like heavy metal music where it's like an extremity, but actual weight pushing down. We did have something in here that kind of approached a bit more of a doomier side. We dropped the tempo way down and went for some darker, gloomier chords as well. Um, there's some rule of cool stuff in here, and then there's also just the avant-garde, eclectic ideas, very noisy and dissonant harmonies going on. Sometimes we have groovy metallic riffs, sometimes we have shreddy kind of riffs, sometimes we have technical or progressive riffs. It's all over the place. And I don't even want to think about how many sections are in this track. There's got to be at least 12. 12 to 15 different musical ideas that comprise this song alone, much less part one. I I don't know what all of it means yet. There's too much music for a single listen. But generally speaking, like I said, most of it is heavy, aggressive, abrasive in one way or another, and extreme. And that's kind of my read on it. It's just this constant weight that occasionally gives me levity in ways that I don't know are necessarily intentional, but the song puts a smile on my face and makes me giggle uncontrollably at times. So there is that, where I do find levity, and maybe that's what makes it a bit more uh, bearable for me. Because if this was 18 minutes of any of these traditional metal sounds, I would not be as receptive to it. It is the oddities, it is the contrast and the variety that's present in this track, in the album as a whole, that keeps me engaged to it. Always has me looking around the corner. What's coming next? I want to know. But it also keeps me on my toes phrasing wise too. I don't have a lot to say on this, but there are certainly some sections where I anticipated something to happen, and I would have been right if they were working with 8 or 16 bar phrases, but they put random extensions at times. Sometimes I'm able to anticipate shifts, and other times I'm jumping the gun because they decided to put an extra 2, 3, or even at times 4 bars in there, just repeating that what should have been the end of the phrase, just repeating it over and over, or holding out the notes even longer than it should have been held out. Little oddities like that, that again, keep me on my toes. Anytime that I think I know what's going on, they remind me that I don't. That they have total control over this song and my experience of it. So, yeah, it is an interesting listen because of the ways that it constantly subverts my expectations. Now, I mentioned I was going to praise some stuff. I do feel like this is going to be a bit of rehash of what I did for part one. The guitar work in here is phenomenal. There are some solid melodic riffs in here. There's melodic writing, linear melodic writing, not loops like the riffs are. There is quite a bit of harmonic variety on this too. We have like very vast, open, exploratory sci-fi style chords in here. We introduce very noisy, experimental, dissonant chords. We have moody ones, very melancholic at times, other times aggressive. We also have frantic ideas, and a lot of this is on the compositional side. What kind of chords or chords progressions should we be playing? And that's going to dictate what kind of notes the guitarists have available to them for their melodies, for their riffs. But it's also the riff writing too, the frequency of notes. If you're going to use a lot of syncopation or rigidity of rhythm, a lot of understanding of what you're trying to accomplish goes into what kind of melody, what kind of riff you're going to write. And the guitars for Abigor, they get it. They have a vast understanding of a lot of ideas and how to best incorporate them for specific feelings, moments, and expression. And I just really love hearing it because it's, to me, it showcases a width of musical knowledge. This isn't a band whose guitarists just know how to make metal music. They don't just know how to write rule of cool riffs. They understand a lot of harmonic theory. They also understand how best to deliver emotions through melody, using dynamic ideas, if not necessarily always layering and volume, which is fairly consistently maxed out most of this time, but how to use a variety of rhythms and syncopations and different types of techniques, whether you're going to allow notes to ring out or you're going to mute them or any of that. If you're going to create more fluid movement or whether you're going to use, hammer-ons to produce a trill effect. They understand how to extract the most amount of emotion out of a section and have a wide palette of tools to do so. And it's just quite effective. The bassist I want to lump in here too, since they're also a guitarist. Excellent bass work on this. I love hearing the bass just be present in the mix. I love hearing the bass contribute to melodic ideas. I think it was only like 3 minutes in and they took a whole section lead on their own. But they're always, even if they're secondary, if they're foundational, they might be sitting on the bottom. Sometimes they are playing pedal tones, but sometimes they also have some moving foundational lines too, just to ensure that they are contributing something more than just playing, the root note of a chord over and over and over. But there at the end, too, we had some really awesome counterpoint between two guitars. Now, it was pretty late in the song. I would have liked more counterpoint present throughout, but I was glad to have some here. I thought it worked really well. There's a groovy element going alongside it. So, like, the section was solid. The dual melody lines were solid. They lined up and started to do harmony, and the bass sneaks in from underneath to provide the new counterpoint. I mean, it's so well written and performed, and it's just so good to listen to. I love moments like that just really shine through. Speaking about shining through, I could wax poetically for hours about this drummer, and I know I said a lot about them last time too. This drummer has all of the chops. They have the endurance and the precision for blast beats, for double bass kick, for all of the extreme styles when they're necessary. But I feel like where they're really at home is more melodic and expressive playing. It's in there right from the start. I think the very first time we hear drums, they're doing something interesting. They're not just giving us a pretty straightforward metal beat. It's the little flourishes that they put in, even when they are doing blast beats and maybe 16th note bass kicks, just that fully rigid sound to like dominate this feeling and just push forward this driving momentum. They'll still put, on beat 4 of every bar, some really fun cymbal work just to spruce it up a little bit, put some ornamentation around it, make it look nice. It's not just the aggression. And that's what makes me think that this is really their home sound, this more expressive version of drum work. Because even when they go for something more traditional, they still have to put their mark on it. They still have to put their style on it. And it is infectious to listen to every time the cymbals pop up, particularly the ride. They seem to have an affinity for that one. Now, granted, here's another thing I really like about this drummer. They use a lot of the ride too. Something about cymbals is that they have different timbres depending on where you hit them. If you hit them on the outside, it's going to sound different, usually a bit more shimmery than if you hit towards the middle or even the inside of it towards the middle. And then if you hit the bell too, the little loop up at the very center. All of those have their own particular sounds to them. This dude uses all of them. It is one cymbal, but it's basically got 4 notes on it, and he knows how to use them all, when to use them. And it's just really, it's great to see that. You just don't get to hear too much of that in rock and metal. Usually, your drummers are going to just get more cymbals. I have the ride, it makes the ride sound. Let me get a different cymbal for a different sound. But this guy, he gets it. He gets it. Every part of the drum kit has its own sound and flavor. And he's just absolutely using every single bit of the kit. I kind of like that rhyme. Using every bit of the kit. Um, and it's just, and that's during the more mundane moments too. Like I said, straightforward idea with his flourish on top. When the dude decides to go melodic, and it's no longer about keeping the beat, at least not primarily. Sometimes he will still be keeping the beat, but he's all over the kit, almost creating a melody line out of all of the different pitches that the kit has. I mean, the cymbals have pitches, the snare and toms have pitches, the bass kick have pitches. They're not modulatable. They're not you can't change them, not easily on the fly anyways. You know, the bass kick is always going to be whatever note it's tuned to. But it is a note. And the toms are notes, and the snares are notes. I mean, just think about a tom rundown. Dooga 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 dooga. Those are four notes, man. That's why it sounds great to go down from the highest toms to the lowest ones. It's basically a descending melody line. And he's just using this kit as if every piece of it is a different note, and he's building a melody out of that. And it's just, dang, man. And the cool thing is that there's still a rhythmic flow to it. It's still, while there is a melodic component, there is a lot of rhythmic uh, priority to it to create something that is still, in a sense, groovy or tickles that rhythmic side of the brain that wants to hear interesting rhythmic devices. There's so many metric modulated elements in here, which is basically where you keep the time signature the way it is, but you play it in a different time feel. So maybe you can keep like quarter notes for your 4/4, but maybe you throw in a bunch of triplets instead. So it sounds like you're slowing down even though the song tempo isn't changing and the time signature isn't changing, but you have shifted to slower groups of 3 instead of the faster groups of 4. It makes it feel like the time of the song or the speed of the song is increasing or decreasing when it isn't. You're modulating the metric part of it, the rhythmic side of it. And the drummer loves to do this. There's one thing at the end during a drum fill, I don't even know. He went through 3 different mods. Yeah, I don't know, dude. It slowed down and then sped up and ramped up fast and then came back to where we were. And that just blew my mind. Um, the drummer's just a beast. Absolutely phenomenal. And like I said, I can't praise them enough. To be completely fair, they're usually the first thing I listen to in a new section for this group. I hear a new idea coming up. Maybe there's a hard break and a beat or two of silence, and we're coming in on a heavy beat one. I'm like, all right, what's the drums doing? Let me check them out first because I know, no matter what, they're gonna pique my interest. The guitars might be too heavy, might be too traditional metal. The bass might just be playing pedal tones. The vocals might just be doing growls here. But the drummer, without fail, always something awesome. And they're the standout to me in this group. Of a group full of standout individuals, it's really impressive that they put the bar so high, and I still can't get enough of the drummer. I still put them just point 0.1 higher. If the band's like a 9, they're the 9.1. And it's just, it elevates every moment of the song. And that takes us to the vocalist. I mean, how many voices does this guy have? How many does he need? How many times does he need to crack me up? The shift to the choir at the end of all of the like staggered growls and harshes that kind of reminded me of the end of Master of Puppets, and then taking all this staggering and lining it up and changing it to clean vocals for this choir bit. It's such an absurd idea, but they do it with such charisma and such dedication to the bit that you just kind of like, okay, yeah, dude, this works. They have the follow through on it. They have the conviction for it, and and it's all vocal ideas there. It's so bonkers. But even right there, the plethora of harshes that we can hear in these staggered yells of "We Fall," I think, as they were saying. Um, the dude has like five, six different types of harshes in here. A lot of it seems to be on the lower energy side, and there was dude, one, he just basically made a blackened type of like 80s Valley Girl, just put a lot of compression on the like gag me with a spoon, and just like put a lot of compression on that and turned it into a black metal, but it was like nasally and very fry and just like the most interesting inflection on the syllables too. It reminded me of like, that classic 80s stereotype of the Valley Girl with that inflection, but like they decided to join a metal band but didn't really want to change their vocal delivery much. They just wanted to get a little bit of that rasp in there. And that must have been like 4 or 5 minutes in. It just cracked me up. But it's more variety. This dude he's a vocal chameleon as long as it's, you know, black metal, fry kind of stuff. The cleans were nice, assuming he did the choir cleans at the end, but I think that's really the only time we got any clean vocals in here. But I mean, you can't really get bored of any of the vocals either. He'll stick with a sound for a few bars and then move on to something else. A different vocal style will come out. And none of them really I like, but the variety and the speed of shifting between styles kept me around. It's one of those things again where it's just like I'm peering around the corner. What's gonna happen next? What kind of voice is this guy gonna break out? And it's entertaining. And this is definitely one of those albums I think that meets me in the middle in an interesting way. Usually I talk about bridge bands that do things that you enjoy, in context you don't, which means that if this were a bridge album, it would need more clean vocals, really strong melodies. Well, there's a lot of strong melodic writing on the guitar side too, but like linear melodies, and maybe even a little bit less of the metal flair, maybe bringing in a bit more core possibly. But they don't meet me in the middle on genre. They meet me in the middle on entertainment. This isn't, like I mentioned earlier, a sound I generally enjoy, but I'm very entertained by it. And that's not usually a way I describe music. I either like it or I appreciate it. But I'm entertained by this. While also definitely appreciating the chops on display too. The technical side of this cannot be diminished. It cannot be, completely missed in conversation. It is a strong aspect of why this works for me. Um, but I can't ignore the fact that I'm engaged in this in a way black metal rarely does. Not because I'm enjoying the sound, but because I'm locked into what's happening and curious about what will happen next. Sort of in the same way you might be engaged in a film. It's gripping. It has you locked in. Even if it's I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I guess that's the best I have for it right here. I'm going to have to check out this album more again. Kind of see what it is I like about it and what kind of lasting um, connection I might have with it. Like I said, well, not in these words specifically, but alluded to, part of why I like this is the novelty of it. Never really heard anything like it, and a lot of my attention is kept because I'm curious about what is around the corner. What happens when I know what's around the corner? What happens when it's not a novel experience anymore and it's just that avant-garde black metal album that I know front and back? Will I still enjoy it then? That's a really good question. Maybe by the time I hit that point, I'll have Stockholm syndromed myself into enjoying this sound. I don't know. That's why I said, though, I think this is an album I'll come back to once or twice a year just to re experience it at a point where I've sort of forgotten about it. Um, Normally I go on to like themes and what the song's trying to do, but I touched that earlier. I don't know what's going on in here. It's just a lot of a lot. So let's hit some lyrics on this one and see if we can't figure out what's going on there. I was pretty positive about the lyrics last time around. Part one, as far as I could understand it, was about controlling time, controlling space time more particular, and learning how to exist at all time simultaneously. That this was the great power of Satan and the great chains or jail of God was to be bound by time. And by ignoring that, by breaking free of that and exploring time all at once, that we would be able to be more like Satan, to escape those chains placed on us by God. The end of it had a really cool metaphor of Icarus and the Phoenix as ways of examining Lucifer. And through Lucifer's fall from angel into being the ruler of hell and making something out of that, rising out of his failure in a sense, the fall has become this idea of positivity, a way to align your life with the devil's. It was really well written and had some cool ideas in it. I don't see any of that here, though. Maybe I'm missing it. Maybe this song just goes over my head, but it feels more nihilistic, which probably makes sense because I believe at the end of part one we do experience all of time simultaneously. That probably will fracture the mind and leave a rather pessimistic look on life itself. Maybe even from that perspective of being a quasi deity at that point, ruin your perception of humanity and their worth. The song kicks off, though. It says, "Come forth, demise, what sweet revelation do you bring? This is the end of everything, the bottomless betrayal. Time flies and life passes by, forever determined and stuck to the dirt. Thou art desire, thou art nothing." Basically, as far as I can see it, they're ready to end everything. They want to see the demise of sweet revelation. Or, I guess, trying to figure out what they can learn through ultimate demise. What information might be gleaned by seeing the fall of humanity. Also, then reminding everyone that life is meaningless here. We are all just stuck in the dirt. We have desires and we mean nothing. It says in the next stanza that we are simply maneuvering through the twilight of a dying god. This next stanza is accredited to Sagittarius Creed. Not sure who that is, and I couldn't find much about it. But it says we must rape this pure gift of God, the evolution of man, by reaching out beyond his consecrated ground. We must seek the entrance to Satan's time and space-consuming paradise, the anti-utopian perfection. Once again, bringing up space-time and getting outside of the linear time experience that God has set up, the gift of God, and evolve as man to break out beyond this consecrated ground, to experience time in a more devilish way, we can put it, I suppose. But beyond that, a lot of this just sort of falls in line with either of these two ideas. To experience time as the devil would have you, or to understand that life is meaningless. The song seems to jump back and forth, reveling in the end of things, and also speaking about the positivities of a timeless existence. Now, here's something interesting, though, that kind of dawning on me right here. A timeless existence would be one where we don't experience time, but time is kind of a human construct. Depending on how you want to approach it philosophically, time doesn't exist, and it certainly isn't something you'll be concerned about in non-existence, which is a way of perceiving an atheistic death, where there is nothing on the other side. You just cease to be. Is breaking through the time stream, entering into a timeless experience, just a metaphor for death? Is that why so much of this welcomes the demise of humanity? I was kind of figuring it all out last time. I was a little lost on it because I was approaching it from a sci-fi perspective, but what if it's not? What if it's more of a spiritual one? I'm still not sure yet. I feel like both of these songs are a bit vague in this perspective, in this aspect of it, and they hyper focus on things other than the timiness of it too. So it talks about black ships of time leading men to destinations where their spirits will be fed to the lowest of the demons. Another way, though, that time is shown to be life. And when you run out of time, you enter death. It talks about time leading men to hell, basically, where demons feed on their souls. When they run out of time, they die, they go to hell. But I feel like it's a loose connection there. I still don't want to make that jump yet. But it talks about hell as flickering lights, hot wires, electric sparks, flames floating like sulfur to the veins of the so-called saints. I really like that line. That even the people who seem holy in their life end up having secrets that condemn them. It's interesting because it talks about them having fallen from grace, where part one seemed to have a positive view on the fall. This one uses it in a negative fashion, although calling it a delightful scenario to see these people falling from their grace and being someone like this. It talks about Father Time continues to march on, which kind of defeats the idea of breaking through the time stream in part one, so maybe I misunderstood that. Um, it says, "O mighty cosmos, the great consumer, lift your mask and reveal the ultimate principle that none equals none." I've been thinking about this because it is a big moment of the song. Around here is where I started to have the lyrics pulled up, and the music basically cut out, except for maybe a tremolo picked guitar in the background, and the vocals, massive stack. None equals none. Music comes back in real heavy. They really wanted to emphasize this. What is the ultimate principle of none equals none, though? I keep coming at it from a philosophical standpoint. Maybe that we began with nothing, and everything that we have in existence will eventually zero out back to nothing. We were non existence to begin with, we will be non existence when we die. But I don't necessarily think that that represents the principle. It immediately goes in to talk about dualities and trinities, multiplicities, cycles, clarities, death, once and forever. Our comrades in nothingness, above time, above all, we are one. This goes over my head. I think it has something to do with the ultimate principle. If I understood that, I might get this. Afterwards, though, it simply talks about how we all, no matter how small or large we are, will eventually fall to death. And this is where it kind of gets a bit more nihilistic. It seems to present a take on life that, from what I can gather, is a blip that we shouldn't worry too much about. Because non existence before life and non existence after life, aka death, are the static state of things. It's where we are all heading, so why worry about anything right now? Mentioning that we are all slaves to begin with. It says that our hearts are chained bound and that there is a sound that resounds from our hearts like a slave drum. Almost as if to say, once again, if time, if experience in general is the chains of God, putting us in a jail cell, the only way to break out is through death. And that's the only way to return back to any sort of normalcy, in a sense, to return back to the way we were prior. I'm less enthusiastic about my read on part two than I was of part one, Part one didn't feel as nihilistic, but it was also pre-mental fracturing, I think. But it was also hyper focused on the ability to break through time and had some interesting philosophical and metaphorical discussions in it. Here, it's just somebody focused on death, which I can see how it's connected. I'm just less excited to dig into that. With nothing else to say about this, I suppose, I'm just kind of deflated here at the end. These are my thoughts on Abigor's Time Part 2. There's a lot more to that title, but I don't. What is it? Time is the sulphur in the veins of the saint. Oh, veins of the saint. That was a line in here. Electric sparks becoming flames floating like sulphur through the veins of the so-called saints. Huh. That's where they get the title from. Anyways, these are my thoughts. What are yours? Did you enjoy this? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to the discussion or maybe correct me on if I misspoke about something? Let me know. Put all of that and any interpretations or additional thoughts you have about this song into the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.